speaking of media, NPR found it necessary to translate my appearance on Chris Wallace's show Sunday for their audience. Last night, we're about to audio soundbite number 4 here. Last night on NPR's All Things Considered, we have a portion of a report by the correspondent Brian Mann about my Fox News Sunday appearance and my reaction to the student anti-gun movement in Parkland, Florida. Again, this is apparently a weekly thing here that NPR does to translate me to their audience.
These kids have blown up on TV and across social media, but there's one place where their message is falling flat.
Now, let's bring in the king of conservative talk radio, Rush
Don't you love
Limbaugh.
it? Hang on a minute.
Conservative media, TV, websites.
Stop the tape. Don't you just love the setup for these things? But there's one place where their message is falling flat. And Chris Wallace, now let's bring on... That's very cleverly done. You have to admit that. Okay, take it again from the top in 3, 2, 1.
These kids have blown up on TV and across social media, but there's one place where their message is falling flat.
Now, let's bring in the king of conservative talk radio, Rush Limbaugh, live from...
In conservative media, the TV, websites, and talk radio favored by tens of millions of Americans, the Parkland story sounds very different. Limbaugh appeared on Fox News Sunday with Chris Wallace. Limbaugh described the Parkland students as articulate and angry, but he also said they're being used by the left and by Democrats in a bid to take away people's gun rights. The real answer, Limbaugh said, is more guns in schools.
The solution to me, and I know this is going to cause all kinds of angst, the solution is we need concealed carry in these schools.
Across conservative media, the narrative after Parkland is that shootings like this aren't really about guns. They're about a breakdown in the fabric of American society, about disintegrating families, a lack of Christian values.
You got all that from my my appearance with Fox News Sunday, Chris Wallace. I didn't say more guns in schools. That's not the thinking in my advocacy here. More guns in schools? How about some guns in schools? There aren't any except in the hands of the perps. Well, it would make it more, but that is a loaded and charged way of describing in critical ways my proposal, which is reasoned and thought out, deeply researched. Schools are the one public entity where we have no armed security, where we don't treat what happens at schools as what could happen on an airplane or in a movie theater or in any other public venue, a ballpark. And we act surprised every time it happens. And then we start those damn guns, the damn NRA. The football coach, as I say, who heroically died by shielding students with his body. What if he hadn't had to die to save them? What if he had had an alternative? And by concealed carry, this can be demagogue too. I don't mean students ought to be packing in their socks or in their back pockets or anything like that. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about professional armed security that you may not even know who they are. You got a suit walking down the hall, just like you don't know who the air marshals are on board a commercial flight. You just don't know. All you know is that they're there. And while they will not be available in every immediate vicinity, it won't take them long to get where they need to go. But the left says, you can't do that. That's a recipe for disaster. You're putting a gun in the school. Accident could happen. The security guy could lose his mind. He could be a deranged conservative himself and start shooting it up himself. That's what they'll tell you is the danger. It's what makes me think that in many of these people's cases on the left, they don't really want a solution because the issue is too valuable. ABC's The View today discussing student anti-gun protest rallies. Here is co-host Whoopi Goldberg.
It is really kind of exceptional that they are gathering and saying we're going to go out and protest. Now, Rush Limbaugh sort of said, well, what's the point of doing this? Because nothing will ever change. Well, I have to tell you, things do change. Mm-hmm. People taken to the streets, young people taken to the streets changes things. I know this because I watched it happen during the civil rights era.
Right.
I watched it happen during the women's marches that used to happen. People can make change happen, and it's a good thing.
I have never said change doesn't happen, but protests. The next shooter is out there. The next shooter, pardon the repetition, but I'm going somewhere with this, folks. The next shooter is out there. The next shooter knows who he is. The next shooter has his gun. Whatever gun law you pass ain't going to stop him, he's got his gun. The shooter after that is out there. He has his gun. The next shooter after that probably is out there and has his gun. And in all cases, people know that this particular shooter, before he's the shooter, is a lunatic. They know he's not right. Something's wrong with the guy. They know who it is. Like, apparently everybody knew that this kid Cruz was a time bomb waiting to explode. Nobody did anything about it, but they all knew. Well, the next shooter is out there. People that know him probably saying the same things about him they saying about Cruz. So now we're going to have students marching on Tallahassee and they're going to march on Washington. And the next shooters are out there with their guns, and they've got their guns, and they're watching the protests. Are these next shooters, and this is what gets me hated, by the way, what I'm going to say next. This is why the left hates me. Are these shooters that are already out there and already have their guns going to watch these protests and these marches and say, you know what? I am so moved, I'm not going to do it. No. Now, the reason I'm hated is because really analyzing what they say illustrates how full of holes it is. And that just burst the bubble. And they live in this emotional place where they concoct these ideas, where marches and protests are a kind of magic. Even if they don't accomplish anything, it's still a decent, good thing to do because it shows caring and compassion. And then I come along and point out how it actually isn't going to stop the next shooter and effectively blows up their balloon, shatters their cocoon, and makes them confront the fact that what they're doing is not going to matter. So they hate me. And most people don't do what I do. Most people applaud it. That's great. I love the commitment, they say. I love the compassion. And we should listen to these students. They're really on the ball here. They really know what they're talking about. They really have we need to listen to the students. And we listen to students, it's anti-NRA, while always being portrayed as being unpolitical. You ever had a young person, you ever talking to a young person, teenager, about their future, and you ask them about it, and they give you some gobbledygook that is typical of youth. It's not properly formed. They're too young. They don't have life experiences to know really what they're talking about. So their desires and their stated goals are platitudinous and big and expansive and wonderful, and your reaction, you think, this is the most unrealistic thing I've ever heard of. This is crazy. But you don't say that. That's wonderful, Johnny. That's just exceptional because it's politer. It's just more polite, and it's said to be a positive thing to be encouraging. But what you really think is you're listening to a bunch of childish, immature pablum that you know is going to change as they grow older. But you don't say that. Well, I do. And they hate me for it. Because I'm the mayor of Reelville. And I still don't see anybody seriously talking about something that would stop the next shooting. Because the next shooter is out there and has his gun. So what is all this other stuff actually for? And for whom is it really being done? Like Trump said, I'll take the heat. Be happy to take the heat. Don't go away. Be right back.